Hi guys, welcome back to another history video with me. Today we're starting to do the 45 presidents, but we're going to be looking at them in more detail. In today's video, we're going to be doing 37th president, Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was actually the 37th president of the United States, and So I got a wheel of all the 45 presidents, and each one I had to choose, I had to delete them off the wheel. So now we have 44 presidents left on the wheel. Richard Nixon became president after Lyndon B. Johnson. Richard Nixon served out 2 terms. He was also a vice president. He was a vice president to Dwight D. Eisenhower, who served 2 terms. But we'll get to that later on. So I did my own research about Richard Nixon. He does have a nickname, which I'm not going to say it because it's a bit inappropriate. So let's get started. Richard Hillhurst Nixon was born on January 9th, 1913 until April 22nd, 1994. He was the 37th president of the United States, serving from 1969 to 1974. A member of the Republican Party, he previously served as a representative and senator from California, and as the 36th vice president from 1953 to 1961 under the president Dwight D. Eisenhower. His presidency saw the reduction of U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. I do not know that. Or dated with the Soviet Union and China, the Apollo 11 moon landing, and the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency and Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Nixon's second term ended early when he became the only U.S. president to resign from office as a result of the Watergate scandal. So when Richard Nixon took the presidency, he was only 56. He still does make the youngest list of presidents. I mean, that's kind of true. So this is his portrait. This is his office portrait from 1972. 37th President of the United States. He was in office from January 20th, 1969 until August 9th, 1974. He was preceded by Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the 36th president, and was succeeded by Gerald Ford, which was Richard Nixon's vice president. And plus, that is weird because Lyndon B. Johnson was actually a vice president to John F. Kennedy, but when he was assassinated in 1963, Lyndon B. Johnson became president. Also, in 1969, it was the death of Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Dwight D. Eisenhower died 100 years. It's exactly 100 years he died. Well, technically, there's a weird coincidence. Dwight D. Eisenhower died in 1969, but Franklin Pierce died 100 years before. He died in 1869. There's a 100-year gap between Franklin Pierce and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Franklin Pierce was 48 when he took office, but Dwight D. Eisenhower was 62. He's much older. And the 36th Vice President of the United States. He was in office from January 20th, 1953 until January 20th, 1961. The President was Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was preceded by Alben W. Barkley and was succeeded by Lyndon B. Johnson. Again, he was also a vice president. He was born as Richard Milhouse Nixon on January 9th, 1913 in California. He died on August 22nd, 1994, aged 81. He died in New York City in the U.S. His resting place is Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum. His political party is Republican. He married Pat Ryan in 1940, but she died in 1993. So she died a year before Nixon died. His children, he only had 2 children. Oh, that's so sad. His father is Francis A. Nixon, and his mother is Hannah Milhouse. And these are his educations. He went to Wilton College, BA, and Duke University, LLB. And this was his voice. Nixon speaks on peace in Vietnam. It was recorded on November 3rd, 1969. So this was a few months after the death of Dwight D. Eisenhower at the time. I will probably play it in this video because when I did Walter Mondale, who was a vice president to Jimmy Carter, I wasn't able to play the video because I don't think I want to. And plus, there is a lot of information about this president. Nixon was born into a poor family of Quakers in Yorba Linda in Southern California. He graduated from Duke Law School in 1937, practiced law in California, and then moved with his wife Pat to Washington, D.C. in 1942 to work for the federal government. After serving active duty in the Naval Reserve during World War II, he was elected to the House of Representatives in 1946. His work on the Alger case established his reputation as a leading anti-communist. In 1950, he was elected to the Senate. Nixon was the running mate of Eisenhower, the Republican Party's presidential nominee in the 1952 election, and served for 8 years as vice president. He narrowly lost the 1960 presidential election to John F. Kennedy. After his loss in the 1962 race for governor of California, he announced his retirement from politics. However, in 1968, he made another run for the presidency and narrowly defeated the Democrat incumbent Vice President Herbert Humphrey, seeking to bring the Vietnamese to the negotiating table. Nixon ordered military operations and covert bombing campaigns in Cambodia. He ended American combat involvement in Vietnam in 1973, and the military draft the same year. His visit to China in 1972 eventually led to diplomatic relations between the two nations, and he then concluded the anti-ballistic missile treaty with the Soviet Union. Domestically, Nixon pushed for the Controlled Substances Act and began the war on drugs. Nixon's first term took place at the height of the American environmental movement and it enact many progressive environmental policy shifts. His administration created the Environmental Protection Agency and passed legislation such as the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Air Acts. He implemented the drafted 26th amendment, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18, and enforced the discrimination of Southern schools. Under Nixon, relations with Native Americans improved, seeing an increase in self-determination for Native Americans, and his administration declined the termination policy. Nixon imposed wage and price control for 90 days, began the war on cancer, and presided over the Apollo 11 moon landing, which signaled the end of the space race. He was re-elected in 1972 when he defeated George McGovern in one of the largest landslide victories in American history. In his second term, Nixon ordered an aircraft to resupply Israel losses in the Yom Kippur War, a conflict which led to the oil crisis at home. From 1973, ongoing revelations from the Nixon administration's involvement in Watergate endangered his support in Congress and the country. The scandal began with a break-in at the Democrat National Committee office, ordered by administration officials, and expanded despite cover-up efforts by the Nixon administration, of which she was aware. On August 9th, 1974, facing almost several impeachment and removal from office, Nixon resigned after he was issued a controversial pardon by his successor, Gerald Ford. By the way, he was also his vice president. During nearly 20 years of retirement, Nixon wrote 9 books and undertook many foreign trips, rehabilitating his image into that of an elder statesman and leading expert on foreign affairs. On April 18th, 1994, he suffered a devastating stroke and died 4 days later. Ranking of his time in office had proven complex, with his successes of his presidency contrast against the circumstances of both his accession and his departure from office. Now, obviously, Richard Nixon did actually get re-elected. That's why Richard Nixon did serve 2 terms in office. His first term completed with the Vietnam War, which happened in 1970, like in the 1970s at the time. Richard Nixon was actually 56 when he took office, but he did have a post-presidency of nearly 20 years, as he did die at 81, though. He did serve 8 years in office, which means he did 2 terms. There is one president who did more than 2 terms. Like the other presidents, he was one of them who served 2 terms. But he actually resigned out of office as he didn't want to run for a 3rd term. I wish Richard Nixon could run for a 3rd term, but yeah, and that would be really cool. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. I will see you guys in my next video.